Cry havoc! And let's slip the dogs of war!
Chris Scalzi here with
Matt Howell.
And in this episode of The First to Run, Matt and I have settled in and wrapped ourselves up in the comfy blanket that is the latest Denzel Washington thriller. This time it's The Little Things. Then it's on to the Irish animated folktale Wolfwalkers. There'll be a shockingly fun review of the big release of some physical media featuring your straight-to-DVD and streaming picks of the week. And then Matt and I are going to close out the big show sharing our 5 favorite movie cops of the new millennium. Basically, any cop that showed up in a movie since the year 2000, right, Matt?
Okay, sure.
So in this episode, we actually have a sponsor we're very excited about. It's brought to you by Army Hammer's barbecue sauce. Don't worry what's in it, just enjoy it.
You can put it on anything.
Weird. All right, let's start everything off with a clip from The Little Things.
Gonna come in?
11 more, you can make a calendar.
Uh-oh.
Oh, hey, stranger. Tired of steaming up that glass? Prezzies?
Oh, yeah.
This is the part where I start feeling like it's a trap.
Open it up, find out.
It's not a pair of mittens.
Go on, take a look. You know you want to.
Matt, SAG Awards and Golden Globe Awards nominee Jared Leto stars with Denzel Washington and Rami Malek in The Little Things. What is The Little Things all about?
Okay, so Denzel Washington plays John Deacon, an ex-LAPD homicide detective who is now moved up north to Kern County and is working as a sheriff's deputy. The line of duty calls him to go back for whatever reason to LA, where he gets embroiled in a series of murder cases that match one that may have haunted him from his past.
Sounds good to me. So, Matt, my first real question for you here is, I think generally, is Rami Malek a bad actor?
Yeah, I don't. Have you ever watched Mr. Robot?
No,
the thing that
was
kind of
gonna be
like
my
set him
question
off
for you, because I know that's what really rose him to prominence, right? And then, of course, he won an Academy Award as Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody. So, but I got to tell you, watching this thing gives me no urge to check out the Mr. Roboto show thing.
Yeah. So in Mr. Robot, he plays a computer hacker who's supposed to be like this, like, what's the word I'm looking for? A prodigy kind of thing. It's implied that he may be on the spectrum. I haven't really seen the last couple seasons of it. But he does a lot of that kind of staring off into the distance and looking kind of bug-eyed and everything else like that. So it's basically what he did in this movie, except in Mr. Robot, it fits the character more. This is like Pregnant Pauses, the movie, is what this is. Like, there's a lot of, like, they'll say some kind of stereotypical cop dialogue that's supposed to sound hard-boiled, and they just kind of stare at each other meaningfully with Rami Malek and Denzel Washington, something that they do so well, apparently.
Clearly. And I will say, I knew of Malek previously due to first-run favorite Short Term 12. Which is like the all-star film of up-and-coming actors. If you haven't seen that, of course, we always push that movie. Go ahead and buy it. If you don't like it, Matt will refund you. But I was looking forward to this a little bit. I mean, I love Denzel, right? He's probably one of our favorite actors. He always turns in some kind of really interesting, nuanced performance. Whether he's kind of this... They're like, well, okay. He's really done this run recently, though, of these kind of action thriller films. He'd worked a lot with Tony Scott with some really good films, too, and I, to this day, will defend Man on Fire. But here, I don't know what's happening in this movie, Matt. It's Washington, for me, is sleepwalking through this whole thing. And Leto probably does deliver the best performance of the film, but it's a low bar. Like, what's the old joke? It's like praising syphilis for not being cancer or something.
That's not the joke you used to tell.
I
That's
know.
not the joke.
But still, it is the most interesting performance. I definitely don't know if it's awards worthy. That's for sure.
Right.
And the whole film, it's like all of these. Here's what it boils down to, basically, I think, is that our director watched the first season of True Detective and wanted to make a movie that focuses more on the men, the detectives, and the criminal more so than the underlying mystery of the film. Now, I think there's some interesting ideas going on here, right? It tries to play with the ambiguity of, your right and wrong decisions and how to deal with guilt. And it does, I think, a relatively fine job of maintaining the secondary mystery of why Deacon left the LAPD, right? But that's part of the problem, and maybe even that's a more interesting story to tell. Hancock seems to think so, because he does little, really, with the core mystery here that we have in this film, particularly with who our bad guy is, which we guess is Leto.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we have, it needed to have a better script and more commanding performances if we're going to basically just do a 2-hour riff on True Detective, because that's our archetype here, and that's why I think it fails. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this movie is a bit of a mess. It doesn't really know the story it wants to tell. I've kind of soured a little bit on late career Denzel here, because he seems to turn in the same performance every time. The last few movies, especially these kind of actiony type movies.
Yeah, I mean, he was great in Fences, but that is an anomaly in his recent work.
I agree, but you could basically take this character and put them in the Equalizer, and it would be the exact same character. Yeah. Or put a cowboy hat on him, and he would be what he's done for Antoine Fuqua. Was he in the Magnificent Seven? Yeah, he was. Okay, I blocked that movie from my mind, but
smartly.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. You have Malek doing his kind of weird bug eye thing, and Denzel doing his best Jay Farrow impression, just kind of living up to all of his quirks as an actor. And then you've got Leto just being weird. I don't really know. I think this movie really suffers because it doesn't know what it wants to do. It doesn't know if it wants to tell the story of Denzel's detective, Deacon, or if it wants to tell this murder mystery with whatever happened to these girls. And neither one of those things is really solved in a satisfying way. I didn't care enough going into it about what happened to Deacon to where the payoff was. I was like, oh, okay. Where I was more invested in this. I wish it was more of maybe it would have been more boring, but just a more rote murder mystery serial killer story, and that might have worked out better.
Yeah, and one of the more I agree with you entirely. And one of the more infuriating things about the film too, for me, is that there is some interesting shot selection in this film. There are some kind of beautiful images, but what infuriated me is when the director John Lee Hancock, he also wrote the film. There is actually a scene with Malek and Washington on this bridge overlooking a crime scene, and then Malek says something that basically it's God, it's almost beautiful from this distance, right? And I feel like that's Hancock telling the audience, look at what I'm doing. Isn't this thing beautiful? Look at these shots amongst this horror. Again, it's everything that Fukunaga does with True Detective is just this 2-hour kind of vapid, vacant movement, or this translation of that series into this film. And it just doesn't work. I enjoyed Denzel enough just because I like him on the screen with his presence, but what you said about him in this film was entirely correct. Same with Malek. I don't know what the hell is happening with this film, and the fact that Leto's getting award nominations and buzz for the Oscars as well. Meanwhile, what's the guy's name for Sound of Metal? Has been totally shut out.
Riz Ahmed.
No. He's your star. I'm talking about where's Paul Racy? As the guy who runs the rehab center.
Right.
Not totally shut out. But we're gonna have Leto popping up. And let's not even get into Lindo, which is Super Yaki. If you go to Super Yaki on Twitter, she has a store. I actually bought the shirt. Something about like nominate Delroy Lindo, you cowards.
Yeah, so that should age well. That should age well. See how Tom Sunik gets here, because when do they announce the Academy Award nominations?
They did the short list for some of the technical categories this the other day.
Okay.
And one of the weird ones there too was the lack of Invisible Man for special effects.
Okay.
And still no stunt category.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't hold your breath for that.
But I think we should incorporate that into this year's Oscar predictions. We should, when we do Best Actor, Actress, and then who should win, who will win.
Yeah.
We should we're going to include a stunt category going forward.
Okay.
I think we did it last year too, but we definitely need to maintain that. Anyway, back to the Little Things.
Digress. Yes.
Which is a slight film. What are your final thoughts here?
I'll just make my point about Jared Leto and awards. I mean, I think it's just been a weak year overall. I mean, for the most part, he wouldn't have even been a blip in most years. And it's the Golden Globes. They always have these out there. They're kind of like a joke at this point. I don't even watch the Golden Globes because they usually are pretty painful.
But SAG too.
I guess. I think a lot of it has to do with recency bias. A lot of the stuff that we're talking about happened earlier, first half of the year kind of thing. Whether that's right or wrong, I would say it's wrong, but it does happen. It seems to happen. That's why all your award bait movies all come out towards the end, right before the awards season. It's so it's all fresh in people's mind. And I guess, people have a soft spot for creepy, possibly criminal dudes. You do that. If you pull that off right, they seem to love it. So I don't know. I thought it was an okay performance, but I don't see what all the big deal is about.
It makes me wonder how much Leto is just playing himself in this film.
He doesn't sound like that. I saw an interview with him. He doesn't sound like that. But that's about it. He's playing Jordan Catalano out to his end. So I would give this a C. I think I'm probably being generous here. I think it has some interesting images and it had some stuff that I was kind of on board with, so I won't kind of damn it to the depths of Dedham here on the first run, but I think a C is about as much as I can give it.
Yeah, in the end, for me, the reveals of the film, both the end of our two mysteries, are underwhelming. The film never delivers the intended punch it tries to do. In the end, like I said, just rewatch True Detective Season 1. I ended up giving it a C- myself, basically just on the strength of Leto and really Denzel. I mean, he still does the tortured cop thing pretty well. And at least it's always worth checking out, maybe just for that. But I can't really do any other more recommendations for this film. So The Little Things is currently in theaters and on HBO Max right now. Keep in mind that HBO Max run is limited, I believe, for 30 days. So I think you got about 3 weeks, a little less left if you want to check it out there. If you've seen it, shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Matt, coming up on physical media. All right. I want you to listen to this clip and tell me if you can name one of these two actors. Just one or two.
Wow. You've really been through the wars, haven't you?
No, that's fine. It's just my managing.
People ask me constantly, how is it that I'm so loved and adored? And it's actually quite easy.
Hell.
Just win an Oscar.
What did you win an Oscar for?
Caddyshack. First one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he won one of those suckers. You can do just about anything.
Really?
Are you okay, Mr. Chase?
Yes, you need to have these fixed. They just slid right off the table.
Certainly. I'll talk to the owner about gluing them on.
Listen, I was nominated for an Academy Award once.
Really? What for? Couldn't have been acting. No offense.
It was for writing, best screenplay.
Writing? Wow. I didn't know that was still a category. What's next? Best catering?
So there should be enough context clues for at least one of those two actors.
Yeah, one of them's got to be Chevy Chase because I got the inflection of Pierce Hawthorne there towards the end, so it kind of clicked for me.
I've been slowly revisiting Community too. God, that show is still funny.
Yeah.
But the other one is an Australian actor.
Russell Crowe?
Nope.
Okay.
Paul Hogan.
Oh, wow. Crocodile Dundee himself?
So this is the very excellent Mr. Dundee. So Paul Hogan plays basically a version of himself, and he just wants a quiet life and is happy with retirement in Brentwood, California, but he can't seem to stay out of the headlines. When his granddaughter Lucy finds out he's been offered a knighthood for services to comedy and tells all her friends, he reluctantly accepts the offer and has 6 weeks to stay out of trouble before the ceremony. But where Paul goes, trouble follows. And we see Paul's reputation hilariously destroyed the closer we get to this important meeting with his biggest royal fan. Also features John Cleese. So we got a couple heavy hitters-ish there.
Wow.
The very excellent Mr. Dundee. Arch Enemy, which is the film with Joe Manganiello, which I thought we had announced was coming out a couple weeks ago, at least must have been delayed, and is coming out now. That's where he plays Max Fist, who claims to be a hero from another dimension who fell through time and space, but now he has no powers, and no one believes him, but he ends up teaming up with a local teen named the Hamster. So if you want to see Manganiello do his thing, I guess you can check that out again, or for the first time. A Call to Spy. In the beginning of World War II, with Britain becoming desperate, Churchill orders his new spy agency, the SOE, to recruit and train women as spies. Their daunting mission, conduct sabotage and build the resistance. SOE spy mistress Vera Atkins recruits 2 unusual candidates, Virginia Hall, an ambitious American with a wooden leg, or Noor Inayat Khan, a Muslim pacifist. Together, these women help to undermine the Nazi regime in France, leaving an unmistakable legacy in their wake, inspired by true stories. Breaking Surface, a winter trip diving in Norway turns into a desperate race against time for 2 sisters, when one of them becomes trapped on the bottom of the ocean by falling rocks. Keith David features in Horizon Line. A couple flying on a small plane to attend a tropical island wedding must fight for their lives after their pilot suffers a heart attack. Death Trip. 4 friends take a cottage vacation in the dead of winter, seeking refuge from their busy urban lives for only a weekend. However, the few residents who remain in the secluded cottage town of Verdue Ferry don't seem to take kindly to strangers. From the moment they reach their destination, the visitors, a group of 20-something artist types, are confronted by the ominous gaze of neighboring cottages, all of whom have no choice but to tough out the cold winter in this small rural town. Over the course of their stay, the friends begin to uncover dark details about the inhabitants of their houses around them after one of their friends is found mutilated on the front porch of a nearby cottage. The city dwellers quickly discover nothing is what, Matt?
Is as it seems?
That's right.
Wow.
Katherine Hagel stars in Fear of Rain. A girl living with schizophrenia struggles with terrifying hallucinations as she begins to suspect her neighbor has kidnapped a child. The only person who believes her is Caleb, a boy she isn't even sure it exists. The Informer, starring Joel Kinnaman. Ana de Armas. Why can't I say her name now? Ana de Armas? Yeah. Rosamund Pike and Clive Owen. An ex-convict working undercover intentionally gets himself incarcerated again in order to infiltrate the mob at a maximum security prison. The Swordsman. 3 different swordsmen, Matt. A swordsman who's going blind, the best swordsman in the Joseon dynasty, and the best swordsman in the Qing dynasty, who aspires to be the best even in the Joseon dynasty, meet each other for their own reasons. I'm assuming for tea. Criterion is releasing Mandabi after jobless Ibrahimi Ding receives a money order for 25,000 francs from a nephew who works in Paris. News of his windfall quickly spreads amongst his neighbors, who flock to him for loans, even as he finds his attempts to cash the order stymied in a maze of bureaucracy, and new troubles rain down on his head. A brand new 4K restoration of the film, introduction by film scholar Abubakar Senego, a conversation from 2020 with author and screenwriter Babacar Boris Diop and sociologist and feminist activist Marie-Angelique Savon, a new program about director Osmoon Sembene called Praise Song from 2015, and more. Scorpion is giving us the 1980 film The Unseen. A trio of female reporters find themselves staying overnight in a house occupied by a hostile entity known only as The Unseen. Code Red is releasing Slithis. Finally, nature unleashes its revenge. From the pollution of our nuclear waste came the killer we couldn't destroy. Our worst nightmares come to life, Matt, with a terrifying, scaly monster, Slithis. 2K restoration of the film, completed back in 2017. Warner Archive is releasing a bunch of catalog films. Well, two. San Francisco from 1936 and Baby Doll from 56. Now, speaking of catalog films, Matt, we got some 90s thrillers for you. Are you ready?
Ooh, I'm excited.
The Underneath, The Net, coupled with The Net 2.0. You want to talk about a film that has not aged well. The Net. Good Lord. The War, The Cowboy Way, The Breach, The Kid Stays in the Picture, and Good Burger. Your straight to DVD pick of the week, Santo and the Treasure of Dracula, the sexy vampire version, a brand new 4K restoration. After inventing a time machine, Mexican wrestler El Santo. Now listen, folks, if you're not familiar, El Santo is like Superman in Mexico. All right, he was a big time hero back in the day. Well, he uses his time machine to go back in time to track down the location of Dracula's hidden treasure. This is with a noble intention of using the treasure to help fund a children's hospital. In his quest to obtain the treasure, Matt, he is forced to face down and battle Dracula and his bevy of beautiful vampire vixens. The original 1969 release of Santo and el Tesoro de Dracula, nailed that, was black and white and featured no nudity. The film was simultaneously shot in color, featuring full frontal nudity for the European markets, and finally released in Mexico in 2012. And now you can pick it up for yourself. Which should we be streaming this week, Matt?
All right, well, I'm going to throw out the fun time for the whole family. Cronenberg's Possessor is going to be available on Hulu. I think everyone should sit down with grandma, your children, and your neighbor's kids and just soak in the wonderful, not violent at all Possessor for your viewing pleasure.
I like that you're bringing in the neighbor kids, too.
I mean, you might as well spread the love around the neighborhood, right?
Jesus. That film is something else. All right, Matt, let's keep rolling then. Spend a few minutes talking about Wolfwalkers.
You can come out now. We can smell you. Yeah, you stink. I knew you were here. Come out here, hidey-ho. Let's see you. Don't kill me. Ha! I do what I like. Come here. You're a Wolfwalker. So what? You should thank me. Why? I saved your life. Saved me? You bit me. Well, you kicked me in the gob enough times. Well, you were attacking me. I was trying to get you out of that trap. And anyway, you came into my woods. Your woods? They're our woods. Your wolves are attacking the woodcutters and the sheep. They should be staying closer to the town. And so should you, Townie.
Stay out of the woods, Townie. All right, Matt, let's spend a few minutes to talk about Wolfwalkers. It's 1650 in Ireland, and Sean Bean, who may or may not die in this film, and his daughter are brought to Kilkenny to take out the local wolf population so the settlers, Matt, can farm the forest and expand their village. But there's something out there, Matt, walking with the wolves. And that makes it sound like a horror film, which it's not. It's an animated film for the family.
It's the kiddies.
So what are your thoughts on Wolfwalkers, Matt? We've been deluged over the years. Deluged is the right word? Probably not. But a lot of the animation we see nowadays is this kind of CGI, pseudo-realistic, right, animation. That's this kind of stylized, realistic animation. And this is a very different take on an animated film. What are your thoughts on Wolfwalkers? And does this work? Or are you like a Pixar guy through and through?
Yeah. So I did like the kind of the traditional animation that they used that kind of had that slightly Bayou Tapestry kind of old English style, medieval style of character design, and especially in a lot of the background stuff. I thought that was a really cool touch. I appreciated that. Overall, I think the story, while I enjoyed it, I thought it was an interesting look at, obviously man's encroaching on the wilderness, and then you kind of throw in some kind of English, kind of their historical oppression of the Irish kind of thing. Whereas, because obviously the main characters are from England, the Lord Protector's from England, and they're essentially kind of imposing their will upon the Irish, inhabitants of this area of Kilkenny, and kind of putting all that together into this kind of story of friendship and kind of two outsiders finding each other. So I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I liked the whole dip into a piece of what I'm assuming is Irish lore that I am not familiar with. I have never heard of a Wolfwalker like this. I mean, obviously I've heard of werewolves, but I've never heard of something like this, which I thought was an interesting take.
Yeah, well, I am half English, so clearly the English did nothing wrong throughout that entire.
Well, I'm half Irish, and let's talk about that.
So I found Wolfwalkers, Matt, to be positively delightful. All right, it's just, and I'll tell you, when we were going into this, I'm looking at the images on Apple Plus. That's where you can stream this right now, folks, is on Apple Plus. And I was not looking forward to this. I'm thinking it's going to be kind of frenetic, or it's going to be kind of rough or something. And do I really want to watch like a kids movie set in Ireland in the 1600s?
Oh my God, you're just so sophisticated.
Well, it's not just that. It's more just I wasn't feeling it, And I like last night I rewatched The Fog while I was putting together notes for the show. Right. So I mean, I wasn't in that headspace, and I am so glad we sat down to watch this thing. I really, really enjoyed it. It's an eco-friendly film. It's a family film about being young, growing up. You have the political struggles between Ireland and the UK in here, the power of teamwork and nature and friendship, and it's delightful. As I say, I really came around on the animation style. This is kind of loose, 2D, woodblock, almost kind of art look of it all. And I think it's nice to see something different than Pixar. I got to admit, it was a little nice palate cleanser to get away from that genre of animation. And I will say too that the voice acting, the performance in this film were stellar, were fantastic. Sean Bean is very good in this. The whole cast is, I think, universally great. Honor Knefsey, who plays Robin, the daughter, the heroine of our tale, I guess, along with what's her name there, Meb. The young woman Meb, who she teams up with to rescue her mom, just wonderful. Really, is all I can say. I think given the rough style of the animation too, I think which I did end up appreciating, though the performances and themes really kind of anchor the whole thing as well. And one of the more moving scenes in an animated film, of course, outside of some of the stuff in Soul, Inside Out, but that running with the wolves scene was just fantastic. As just the conclusion of the film as well. So, beautiful film. Score-wise as well, had a really nice score that featured some nice Irish folk tunes and some themes and stuff built into it. And just great. Absolutely loved it. Wolfwalkers is an A for me. Just top shelf entertainment.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it an A- just because I can't bump it up against Soul. It's not as good as Soul, but I'm gonna give it an A-. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's nice to see. We don't see a lot of animation or feature-length animation from places other than like Asia or the States, really. So it was kind of nice to see something come out of Europe, especially in the English language, which you almost never see because usually it's like in French or something. So. I really enjoyed this kind of dip into Irish mythology, Gaelic mythology, if you will.
And so this is supposed to be part of an Irish folklore trilogy, and there's two other prior films. I think at least one of them may be on Apple Plus, so I may have to come around and check those out as well. So again, great stuff, folks. If you have Apple Plus, we highly recommend you checking out Wolfwalkers. If you've seen it, shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Really, it's the perfect double bill with Possessor when you get the whole family together with Wolfwalkers. You have your family Annihilator film. Yep.
Do you lead with Wolfwalkers to kind of bring down their defenses, or do you?
Oh yeah, for
kind
sure.
of give them a palate cleanser?
Because they'll be crying tears of kind of joy and stuff with Wolfwalkers, and then you lead into, just the
right into the opening of Possessor.
Yes, you can't really go wrong at all. Just an email, feedback@thefirstrun.com. Matt and I are now going to share our 5 favorite cops in the movies from 2000. So, yeah.
These braised short ribs taste like a dog's asshole.
Hey.
You know what? I'm sitting here thinking, who in the world would slow roast a dog's asshole and serve it to their husband? You would.
You are being awful. What's wrong?
Captain took us off the case.
I'm sorry.
I told Terry about my dark days in college, and it brought up some feelings.
Well, honey Dick, that was a long time ago. You're not that same person you were.
You don't get it. There is a darkness inside of me. It wants to get out, wants to walk around. It wants some walking around money, and it wants to buy some shoes, and it wants to walk up with the people and say, hey, Gator don't play no shit. You feel me? Gator never been about that. Never been about playing no shit.
So, then of course is Will Ferrell as Detective Alan Gator Gamble, and the other guys really just didn't make my list, Matt. It was number 6 for me. I still think the other guys, outside of maybe the heavy-handed ending, is it just doesn't really work. Is a hilarious film, and I've never heard before Eva Mendes call him Honey Dick before.
Yeah, I never. That glazed right over that. I completely missed that. Man, I watched that the other day, and I was like, man, what happened to Eva Mendes? It was nice to see her in that film, especially you cut out the part where she starts singing "Pimps Don't Cry" to him. So
you'll have to watch the movie, folks. Though stay around for the stinger, because my absolute probably favorite line from The Only Guys will close out this episode.
Okay.
All right, Matt. So why don't you start us off? Who's your 5th favorite cop in the movie since 2000?
All right. I think Chris is gonna. It's another list that Chris is gonna get annoyed with. But here we go. So my number 5 is Chief John Anderton, played by Tom Cruise in Minority Report. They is the head of pre-crime. Where essentially the Washington, D.C. PD has a trio of psychics that they keep in their basement that tells them about future upcoming murders, where basically there's no more violent crime, or at least no more murders in Washington, D.C. Everything is hunky-dory until Chief John Anderton is accused of a pre-crime murder, and he goes out to clear his future crime name. It's a lot of fun. I like Minority Report. It's, I think, some good late science fiction from Steven Spielberg. It's a Philip K. Dick mind F. I really enjoyed it. And Tom Cruise, you know what? You can say what you want about the guy, but if he's in Mission Impossible or a science fiction film, he usually delivers.
Yeah, I've watched it again last year, and every time it comes up, I'm like, this. I don't know why I don't connect with that film. No? I don't know what that is. I enjoy it, but it doesn't have the same impact on me that it seems to have a lot of people. So part of me is waiting for that. I think the 4K release. If it's a good price, I may pull a trigger again, try and watch it again. But
I like how you're just determined to connect with this movie.
You think it would? I like Spielberg, right? It's got Tom Cruise.
Right.
What's not to like? But for some reason, I just can't connect with that film. So my number 5 then is probably features the cop from maybe David Fincher's masterpiece. And that is Mark Ruffalo as Inspector Skorsky in Zodiac. Probably the quietest performance of my top 5, but probably one of the most interesting. Ruffalo really shares the determination, frustration, and sadness as he's hunting down the Zodiac killer, teamed up with Anthony Edwards, working kind of loosely with Jake Gyllenhaal's puzzle guy from The Chronicle. And but there's just a everyman quality that he brings to that role. He's just very likable. You feel for him. And I think it may be Ruffalo's career-defining performance, but it never really seems to get talked about that much. So that's my 5.
That's because it got overshadowed by Banner and the Hulk. That's become Ruffalo's defining career performance. But you know what? He's rolling around in the marble money, so good for him. Yep. I can't begrudge him that. But actually, I agree with your pick so much, except I think, I'm going to do you one better. It was my number 4, Inspector Toshi from Zodiac. That movie is just underappreciated. And I will admit that when that movie first came out, I didn't love it as much as I anticipated to love it, but it's just something that has continued to grow on me and just gets better with every viewing. So if you haven't seen Zodiac, go out and check it out. It is one of Fincher's best.
Yeah, I watched it again early last year, and it still really holds up. And it may, like you say, get better with repeat viewings. The opening of that film is still terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, it's great. So then that's going to make my number 4, Matt. It's going to be Detective Ron Stallworth from Spike Lee's Black Klansman. John David Washington. It's the first time I really took notice of him. It was my introduction to him. And I really wanted to do a cheat and include Flip Zimmerman. Right? I think the two of them as partners are fantastic in that film. But if you have to choose one, I'm going to go with Stallworth. I think it's a performance that really kind of holds the balance between this, at times, absurd black comedy and the kind of this righteousness of mission that he is on, where he, over the phone, pretends to be a white guy to join the Klan. And then Adam Driver, the Flip character, Zimmerman, presents himself as Stallworth, right, as they infiltrate the Klan and try and take it down. And Washington there has a charisma here that somehow is entirely vacant from Tenet. I don't quite know what happened there. But still, it is a great performance. It's a fun, energetic, entertaining, educational film. If you haven't seen Black Klansman, you definitely should check it out. Though I will have to see who his dad is. What's your number 3?
Yeah. I wonder who that. I think I've heard of that guy. Just check it out, his other work. I forgot about Black Klansman. It didn't make my list. Although I guess if I was being honest, it might have if I had remembered it. Oh well. All right. So my number 3. This is where Chris kicks me off the show. So my number 3 is, all the rest of them are all buddy cops, and if you put your heads together, you're going to be able to pick all 3 of them, Chris. I want you to see if you can come up with it. So my number 3 is Schmidt and Jenko from 21 Jump Street, which had Channing Tatum cross the line for us. That is the origin of the Tatum line, where they play 2 late 20-year-olds playing high school students, and they call out the ridiculous of it. It has Dave Franco, Brie Larson. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed quite a bit of that film. I think they are a fun pair to watch.
Is the second one when Tatum hooks up with the student that's the daughter, or the first one? I think it's the second one.
It must be the second one, because in the first one he hooks up with the science teacher played by the redhead from The Office, Ellie, whatever her name is. I forgot.
Kemper, I believe.
Ellie Kemper.
So yeah, that second film, particularly that one scene, which you can look up on YouTube, I laughed so hard I cried. when the little bell goes off and Tatum figures out what's happened. Absolutely brilliant. Both those films, those guys are honorable mentions for me, Matt. So they didn't quite make my list, though. So my number 3 then is a military police officer in a substandard film, a film that's okay but entertaining enough to watch. The sequel is an abysmal mess. Where they could have fixed and tweaked things that they did wrong in the first film and really made a better second movie, and then it continued on a franchise that is likely now going to be dead. But it's Tom Cruise as Jack Reacher. I think one of the big keys of that, too, is you have Werner as our main bad guy, Werner Herzog, the Zek. But still, I understand, I'm actually reading the Jack Reacher books now, that Tom Cruise doesn't really fit the description Reacher, the way he's written, or at least described as he's written, as this big kind of hulking kind of guy. But I still think Cruise does the role justice, and it's an entertaining film, and I would like to have seen more Cruise as Reacher films. I think he has the gravitas that Reacher has in the books, if not the sheer size. Right. So Reacher is a film that I revisit on occasion, probably just on the strength of Cruise's performance. And it's entertaining. I do like it. So it's my 3. But I hate that second film so much. So man, it made me so angry.
I haven't seen the second one. First one was all right.
Yeah, couple little tweaks, and we're good to go. And instead, we blow the whole thing up.
Yep. Yeah, they did it to spite you personally, Chris.
They did.
Hollywood's out to get you. All right, so my number 2 is Chris's stinger honorable mention. It's Gator Gamble and Peacock Holtz in The Other Guys. I think you can't really have, as good as Will Ferrell is, if you don't have Mark Wahlberg's Holtz to play off of, and his ridiculous, hyper aggressive, super masculine character, it just doesn't work as well. And I think the pair of the two of them are absolutely hilarious. Just the transition from Gamble from being the number cruncher to Gator as he goes through it. Holtz's desperate need for approval from everyone, including the captain who works at Bed Bath & Beyond, played by Michael Keaton, who is also hilarious.
Quoting TLC lyrics.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's my number 2.
Yeah, I love that scene, too, when they're having dinner, the three of them, and Wahlberg is just shocked by how attractive even
No, seriously, who is that?
I got to rewatch that. It's been too long. All right, my number 2, then, I would be shocked if it's not Matt's one. I don't think he's mentioned him yet. And that's Alonzo Harris. Denzel's possibly career-defining performance in Training Day. And now, it's a career-defining performance in not a very good movie. And it's it's the example I use. A Training Day scenario when the actor's performance outshines the film. And he is a powerhouse in that film. And he elevates and thankfully overshadows just really, as I've said, a subpar film from Antoine Fuqua. So it's really, he is just, I don't know what to describe it. Seeing Denzel really go all in on Alonzo Harris as that dirty cop, kind of putting Ethan Hawke through the ringer there on his Training Day, if you will, is great stuff to watch. Though I do have to see if Denzel has any kids. I wonder if he's got a kid. All right, what do you got?
Yeah, he didn't make my list. He's an honorable mention for me, just because you've worn me down about the failings of that movie so much. Now it just kind of taints everything, and he's been playing kind of a version of that character a lot after that, so that kind of also sours me on it a little bit.
That's true. King Kong ain't got nothing on me is kind of it's becoming a bit of a stereotype, kind of worn out thing. You're entirely right.
It is, yeah. All right, so my number 1 is really the only choice here. A pair of British cops, Sergeant Nick Angel and Officer or Constable Butterman, played by Nick Frost and Simon Pegg in Hot Fuzz. I think the underappreciated, hands down MVP of the Cornetto trilogy. I think Shaun of the Dead gets a lot of love, and I enjoy that film, but for me, Hot Fuzz is where it's at. It is a film that is still hilarious every time I watch it, with Simon Pegg playing against typist, this hyper capable British cop, with Nick Frost playing exactly to type as a bumbling oaf who has a good heart. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy that, and they were my solid number 1 choice.
I love that they push him out of the city to the small hamlet, to the small town, because he's too good at his job, and he makes all the other cops look bad. And then we get I love the little cameo of Cate Blanchett in the beginning of the film as well. And
just her eyes, though.
Yes, and then you're right. It's my number 1 as well. Constable Angel and Butterman, both of them are. If I had to choose one, I go with Peg. I go with Angel, but
yeah, definitely.
Still, in the end, they were my number 1 as well. It was a no doubter for me from the beginning. Another film I haven't watched in a long time. Probably the most entertaining of the Cornetto trilogy. I still think maybe the best film is The World's End,
which I haven't watched in a long time. I need to revisit that.
I have a soft spot for Shaun of the Dead, but probably the most fun is Hot Fuzz. So yeah, I agree with you. There was no real other option. Matt, what were some of your honorable mentions?
So I had Alonzo Harris, like I mentioned. I really wanted to throw them on the list just because they were so fun, even though they made up maybe 3 minutes of screen time. But Danson and Highsmith from The Other Guys, played by The Rock and Samuel L. Jackson, playing exactly the type. That ending right before their kind of end, where they're sitting there at the top of that skyscraper saying, you know what, we could just hit the bushes and roll. that is just exactly what you see in every action movie. It is, and the Foo Fighters playing, and it's just chef's kiss. It's so good. And then obviously many different characters that you could put in from The Departed, even though they're all terrible cops and they're all horrible people, but it is certainly a fascinating series of performances.
That's good. I would go with Jake Gyllenhaal as well as Detective Loki from Prisoners. If you haven't seen Villeneuve's dark film, you should check that out with probably Hugh Jackman's best performance. Woody Harrelson as Bill Willoughby in 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, I think is fantastic as well. Recently, I would include John Boyega as Leroy Rogan in Small Axe, the red, white, and blue version. That's Tale. Park Du-man's character, or Park Du-man in Memories of Murder, which is also one of the kind of the bubbling, kind of lazy, maybe slightly corrupt cop who gets roped into this hunting of this serial killer. And then a great little comedy film with Don Cheadle and Domhnall Gleeson is Sergeant Jerry Boyle. He plays in The Guard. If you haven't seen, I can't recommend enough. It's a funny little action film. Gleeson plays... No, Domhnall's the kid. It's Brandon Gleeson. Excuse me.
Okay. Yeah.
His dad. He plays kind of just, again, slightly dirty cop who gets sucked into this crime terrorist thing, and Cheadle plays the a Fed or something that comes over to help out with the case. And it's very funny, but very, very well done. So if you haven't seen The Guard, check that out as well. And that's it, folks. Who's your favorite cop from the aughts on? Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Matt, what's coming up next week on the big show? I ask you because I don't have it up in front of me.
I didn't look before I started.
That's right. I got it right
usually
here.
Do.
Oh. We got to change we got to swap out our final 5 segment because it no longer fits.
Okay.
But we're going to do Saint and Maud and Freaky.
Okay. Very
good. So a pair of horror films-ish.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out what the final segment will be when we get, when you see us next week. In the meantime, check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Do a search for The First Run. Scroll. Eventually you will find us. Head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. It'll help other people find this show, and we will read it on air. And that's it. Matt, enjoy yourself. We're going to take an extended break, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.
Come lay with me, be safe, and let's make love. Come on.
Every time you say be safe, it tears me apart. You gotta let me be who I'm gonna be.
Ellen, I'm pregnant.
Whose baby is that? Who's the man who did that to you? Gators bitches better be using Jimmy's.